It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. And what all too often happens then is, because that has happened, the bureaucracy is established, and the bureaucracy determines and dictates so much of what happens with regard to how your parents' tax money is spent. What happens in that environment is that when you then have someone who comes and tries to change things, upset the apple cart, change business as usual, reprioritize how your parents' tax dollars are spent without going back to your parents for more of their tax money, because there's already enough there to do the things you think are right for people. It's just got to be spent better and in more important places. Then you run up against not only entrenched political interests, but you then run up against very serious forces that resist those sorts of things that you're trying to do, and will do everything they can to try to keep you from doing it. Now, you made a difference. Not you were too young to vote 2 years ago, but those who just came a little bit before you made a huge difference in 2008. The first African-American president was elected less because of the African-American community, but largely because of young people who saw in Barack Obama something different, young people who saw in Barack Obama the promise of hope and change, young people who got enthusiastic for a change instead of the BS that you hear in politics, young people who saw that you and they can make a difference, came out in record numbers and voted to elect Barack Obama President of the United States with a mandate to change things, because things are bad in America 2 years ago and are still in need of tremendous change and improvement. But it's not enough just to come out in one election and think that, okay, we've done something historic and now the work is over. It only just begins. What Barack Obama is up against in Washington, and what the forces of reaction and the forces of the status quo are all about, is little by little to keep him from being able to bring about the changes that he promised the American people. And so he's up against a very strong, entrenched status quo, not unlike what I was up against in Springfield. And I believe he's doing the best he can, but he can't do it by himself. And one of the lessons about his election in 2008 is not only the power of young people and how important you can be in terms of making the adults have to adjust to some of the things you'd like to see them do, but also how Barack Obama was able to raise the necessary campaign funds that you have to have in order to be able to be competitive in politics and actually win an office so you can serve the people. Barack Obama raised a record amount of money in the 2008 presidential race. More than $1 billion was raised in campaign fundraising by President Obama. And a lot of it came from ordinary people, young people, sending in small donations, doing it once, then doing it again, and then doing it again. He had the biggest fundraising network and base in American history because ordinary people started getting involved. Now, you may not like fundraising, and I can tell you, having done a lot of that over the years, it's not something I like either. But under the rules and the way to be able to campaign and compete successfully, those are the necessary things that have to be done. Can those rules be changed and made better? Absolutely. Do I have a solution? I have some ideas. Are they perfect solutions? They aren't. Do I think, frankly, taxpayers probably are better off funding some of these campaigns than having private donations? Possibly. Do I think the news media has an obligation and responsibility to give free airtime to candidates for public office? Absolutely. In fact, they like the system the way it is now, because when I or Barack Obama or Rahm Emanuel, now the mayor of Chicago, go out and raise all that money, we put those on television ads and we pay them for the advertising time. So they kind of like it the way it is. But I think all of us as citizens might have a better responsibility to make certain sacrifices. See, when I talk about the media, the microphone starts to do that. We all have a responsibility to make some sacrifices for better government, so that the lobbyists and the special interests don't have the disproportionate influence they have on the backs of the people. You are critical to change our country. And if you look at our history, it isn't just in 2008 that you elected Barack Obama. And it's not partisan either, because I got to tell you, the greatest American that ever lived was a Republican. Came from Illinois, Abraham Lincoln. So this isn't about Democrat versus Republican as much as it is about a kind of new enthusiasm, idealism, to take advantage of the great opportunities you have in this country and to make our country even better. And it's also about not allowing those cynical politicians who have too much sway today, the leaders in Springfield and some of the leaders in Washington, though I'll tell you there's a big difference between state government and Congress in terms of the cynicism. You want to go to a cesspool of cynicism, go to Springfield and deal with those two leaders down there, Mike Madigan and John Cullerton, who control the rules and are holding legislation because they're real estate tax lawyers, and your parents have to pay higher property taxes on their homes than they ought to, than they should, because these guys represent big downtown commercial properties. And for every dollar they save for their clients and the percentage or the money they charge in their legal fees, your parents have to pay more in property taxes. Sounds corrupt, but it's legal. It's legal because that's what the law allows, and if the law allows it because those two guys control what bills are called and what bills lawmakers can vote for or against. And simply not calling a bill that would make that property tax system more fair for homeowners and maybe cost their clients some money, but it's a more fair system because ordinary people don't get protected, they simply don't call the bill, and it never happens, and lawmakers don't have a chance to even vote on it. Or they call a phony bill, a bill that looks like it's something, but in reality, it's nothing. And they make it real complicated, they make it very detailed, hard to understand. This is how they also govern on the backs of people, by doing things that are hard to understand. I believe in transparency in government. I believe in full disclosure. I believe that the public has a right to know just about as much as they can. I'm a living example of somebody who knows what it's like to have the government literally in his home and in his bedroom, listening to his telephone conversations. And for those of you who are juniors and seniors, or those of you who might even be younger, I want to apologize for the profanity that I apparently used and did from time to time over those telephone calls. I didn't know anybody was listening. It's not the best way to speak. There is some honesty in it when you use words like that. I'm not proud of it. I can say, though, I've known 3 presidents personally, and let me say that in some respects that language from time to time is actually presidential. They're human too, but I'm trying to do better. And so instead of using some of the words that I used then, and I have to confess still do today, I'd like to think I'm using them less. And so I try to substitute them with words like poltroon, rapscallion, scoundrel, charlatan, that charlatan, son of a biscuit. I have a hard time with son of a biscuit. It just sounds too weak, doesn't it? So I'm trying to improve on that. But I want to be clear here, and I want to say down to you what I've said from the very beginning. There's some conversations that I'm not happy with. I don't like the swearing. There's some other things that are not very flattering, private conversations, talking and thinking out loud with all of your staff, top staff and lawyers, advisors, consultants, and all the rest. Talking about it over and over again, time and time again, because my heart was right, my intent was honest, and I was trying to make decisions that would be ultimately right and make sense and be achievable. And I have said, play them all to the public. Every one of those conversations. I've said, release all the evidence, all of it, with me and everybody else involved in this case. Every FBI interview, every taped conversation, release it to the public. You have a right to know. You have a right to know whether I've been telling you the truth, that I haven't done anything wrong. You have a right to know whether my accusers have been telling you the truth, that I did. And what's very ironic in this case is that I'm the one who's been accused of the wrongdoing, and yet my accusers who made those tapes and made those evidence are the ones who've gone into court and are blocking the release of them to you and the public, and are preventing it from being played in court. Less than 2% of those conversations of mine were played in court, and they object when we try to say, let us play whatever we want so you can get the full context of the conversations. Now, what they played still shows honest conversations, talk, thinking out loud, brainstorming, which is what you're supposed to do when you try to make the right decisions. If they're successful in doing to me what they're trying to do, you should think about what the consequences of this means to the American political system. No president can feel confident talking to his or her advisors because some other part of government may put listening devices in their offices and then take what they say and twist them and try to make it sound like they did something that's wrong. No president would feel safe asking his advisors or her advisors, honestly, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of that idea? What do you think of this? Does this make sense? How stupid is this? Hey, I got this idea. I might want to do that. Imagine what that's going to be like when it comes to governing. No governor will ever talk to an advisor or even a lawyer and ask questions because he or she might then have what happened to me happen to them. This case of mine is really about what America's all about. And it goes to the heart of what our country is about. Free speech, free thought, free expression, and about the ability to govern effectively for people and end up in places that make sense. But you don't end up there by yourself. You don't have all the answers. It's a lonely job to be a governor. It's even lonelier, I have to believe, to be president. Imagine what it's like if President Obama can't talk to his advisors freely and think out loud, even if some of the ideas are stupid, and even if some of the ideas might cross lines, and then he's told by people, you can't do that. That's how you're supposed to govern. Imagine how different the world would be today if Franklin Roosevelt in World War II didn't try to find creative ways to get around an entrenched Congress that didn't want the United States to get involved to stop Hitler in Europe. And Franklin Roosevelt was there doing the best he can to try to save England when they were all by themselves. And Winston Churchill was rallying the English people against the Nazis after they overran Central Europe and then in less than a month overran France. And Britain was alone. And the world thought they couldn't survive. And they were fighting against that tyranny. And how different it would be if the United States didn't provide the help they provided to Britain at that time. And Franklin Roosevelt is seeking advice from his advisors, trying to find ways to help Britain stay in the fight, because he knows that if Britain falls, sooner or later they're coming after us. And so what does he do? He tests Congress, and Congress doesn't want to pass anything to help Britain. Isolationism was the word of the day. We're not going to get involved in any foreign wars. We're not going to get involved in what's happening over there in Europe. And by the way, it's too late. The Brits have no chance. They're going to lose. But then what did Franklin Roosevelt do? He got his advisors together and asked them, how do we get around Congress? Not how do we break the law. How do we get around them to get results that are important to the security of our country? And they came up with an idea with the advice of his lawyers and his advisors to send destroyers to Great Britain without Congress. Necessary destroyers that Churchill felt he needed to be able to keep Britain in the war.